A massive win for President Trump's agenda. The House narrowly passes his sweeping domestic spending bill.
On this vote, the yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
President Trump just moments ago taking a victory lap, saying the bill will be a major boost to the U.S. economy.
This is a great bill. This is going to be a great bill for the country. I mean, they worked so hard, so hard. This has really been going on for over a year, if you think about it. I think, to be exact, about 14 months. And this was the culmination, and I guess it ended a lot earlier. A lot of people thought it would end up the following afternoon. Well, it ended up late in the evening, but they were great.
Well, it comes after House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries blasted Republicans in a record-breaking marathon speech on the House floor that lasted nearly 9 hours in an unsuccessful last-ditch effort to derail the final vote. Democrats simply did not have the votes to curb this bill. Now, this GOP mega bill extends the Trump tax cuts from the first administration. It slashes Medicaid and raises the national debt by trillions of dollars over the next decade. Its landmark passage will likely become a major flashpoint in next year's midterms elections and beyond. So for more on all of this, I want to bring in senior White House correspondent Selena Wang and ABC News' Christian Cordero. And Selena, I want to start with you. This bill, it now heads to the president's desk. We're tracking this. It appears that he's set to sign it tomorrow, July 4th, around 5 p.m. What else do we know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this bill is getting to the president's desk by his self-imposed deadline of July 4th. And the president just moments ago, before he leaves for Iowa, he said that his signing of this bill is going to coincide with B-2 bombers flying over the White House. So the president making a big show in celebration of this. This is a huge victory for the president in this White House. This is likely going to be the most significant piece of legislation that President Trump signs for the rest of his second term. It is chock full of his campaign promises, including ending taxes on tips and overtime, extending his 2017 tax cuts, which mostly impacts the wealthiest Americans. But it also has steep cuts to Medicaid, in part to pay for those tax cuts, including estimates that it would leave 11.8 million Americans without health care over the next decade. And those estimates that it could add more than $3 trillion to the federal deficit. So the president got very personally involved in this process. There was a lot of arm twisting. There were phone calls. There were meetings here at the White House with those GOP holdouts. The president also calling those Republican House members late into the night, overnight. The president's personal sway in all of this was absolutely critical. It was part charm offensive and also part threats. The president had been threatening publicly that he was going to primary any lawmaker that voted no on this bill.
Well, and Selena, to that point, I mean, this was a big test for the president, right? And this is certainly, he's taking a victory lap now, but we just saw his statements moments ago, and I'm going to read a quote here. He says, "I think I have more power now." Where does he stand in terms of his political influence after the passage of this legislation?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think this just once again shows the grip that the president has not only on the Republican Party, but also on Washington. The fact that he was able to muscle this through Congress after, for days, there were these key holdouts who were saying they weren't going to vote for this. They were against the cuts to Medicaid. They were concerned about how this would dramatically increase the federal deficit. But ultimately, the president's cajoling, the arm twisting, got them to a yes without actually giving them any concessions, without making any changes to the actual bill. But look, Democrats, they are seizing on this. They believe that this bill is deeply unpopular and that when Americans start to feel the effects, which could take some time, that Americans are going to realize this isn't what they signed up for, that it could actually help Democrats take back control of Congress in the midterms.
Well, and to Selena's point, Christian, Medicaid was a big sticking point for not just Democrats, but for a lot of Republicans. Those cuts, right, in the Congressional Budget Office estimates that this bill could kick off nearly 12 million Americans from Medicaid over the next 10 years. That's something that President Trump said wouldn't happen. He said that repeatedly over the last several months. So I mean, how are people reacting to this news today?
Well, some Republicans, even those who echoed the president's claims that they wouldn't touch Medicaid, are repeating his claims of eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, albeit without offering specifics. It will take years, as Selena alluded to understand the full effects of these Medicaid cuts. Changes will roll out in phases. Health policy experts and healthcare workers say the biggest impacts will most likely stem from those work requirements, leading people to lose coverage through burdensome paperwork, or by local health centers just closing because they rely largely on Medicaid dollars. We have seen Democrats already trying to get ahead of the angst that this is causing. The ripple effect may take some time, but the message Democrats are hoping, will land with the American people much sooner than that, because as we know, Alex, the primaries are just next year, the midterms rather, are just next year.
Yeah, well, and Christian, that's a good point. But when we look at the Republican voter bloc here, we only had 3 defectors in the Senate. We had 2 in the House. So what are you hearing from Republicans in the wake of this landmark bill?
Well, right now, the biggest noise, if you will, right, is celebration. I mean, this is a massive piece of what President Trump campaigned off of. It hits on many of his campaign promises. And so, there's a lot of celebration here. Vice President J.D. Vance, he even said that he had his doubts as to whether they could meet this July 4th deadline. The fact that they did, of course, says something. It's also important to remember, as you alluded to, that there were a handful of Republicans in the House and Senate who voted against this. Some citing the price tag, some citing those Medicaid cuts, and despite threats from President Trump, which Selena did allude to, that they would face a Republican challenger in the primaries next year if, in fact, they put some opposition to this. And despite that, they did. But also, we noted Elon Musk kind of threatened the opposite, to primary those who did support it. So I think that just sets up a really big battleground for next year.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to track. Selena and Christian, thank you both.